side, from Lanseria, except I see you tried to call me. Sorry, I was at my workshop. Genesis TRC is standing by.
Yeah, thanks, George. Yes, I did. I just wanted to remind you the net was up, so at least you came up. Fantastic. I'd also like to report that Margaret Rutter is also up on Zoom. So Margie can't talk back to me, but good afternoon, Margie. We'll introduce you to John a little bit later. The other John, not J&G. You know, the one that calls me Fuzzy. ZS6 Alpha Golf Echo, ZS6 OPS.
ZS6 OPS, ZS6 AGE. I'm on a bit of a blank mission here tonight. I can't do too much talking. I've got a cancel appointment on Wednesday with my garden engineer. So I might not be able to respond if you call me over the next 10 minutes. I'll be listening, but I won't be able to get back to the net. And good afternoon to all those on the net. It's nice being able to have somebody in the call with me at this point in time. So with that, I'm going to wish you all affinity trees for the moment, and I'll be listening. And I won't be coming back too easily to you, so, but I will respond if you call me in a suitable time frame. That's all I've got to say. ZS6 AGE, and I'm standing by.
All right, thanks, Gordon. Bertus, ZS6 Victor India Lima, ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra.
ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra, ZS6 VRL, and the next, even everybody, nothing to report. ZS6 OPS, ZS6 VRL.
Okay, Mr. John, you coming up next. Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Bertus. Let me see if I can catch John's attention there, as he's walking around and barking and doing all kinds of things, including patting the dog and what have you. So, Mr. John Peterson, November, correction, Whiskey November 2, Whiskey, ZS6 OPS.
Good evening, Chad, and to everyone in the group. It's a pleasure to be with everyone this afternoon there in Johannesburg by way of electronic media. Boy, it's great to be part of the group. Thank you for having me, and I really do enjoy looking forward to this. Back to you, Chad.
All right, Whiskey November 2 Whiskey, ZS6 OPS returning. Thank you, John. I will mute you in the interim, and last but not least, ZS6 Golf Alpha, ZS6 OPS.
OPS in the net, 36 Golf Alpha returning. Good evening, everybody. Good to hear everybody on frequency. Thank you, Chad.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Glenn. Right, let's jump into this afternoon's net, and the subject content being incident reporting. There's a reason I'm bringing it up, and it's something that we need to clear up. And I think just before we try and clear that one up, I want to respond to Joe, Z6JOE, with the no traffic that was brought in earlier. Okay, in essence, MCOM, we're looking at short, sweet, accurate communication. That is the ultimate purpose. Jokes aside, the only person that should be long-winded, and that's by my nature, should be me as the net controller or any other net controller. All other stations should give single word replies wherever possible. The shortest possible response is our ultimate goal. So during a call-in, by announcing your call sign and stipulating no traffic, you in actual fact are saying that you don't have anything that you really want to add. That will give the net controller an indication as to which way he needs to direct his net. If, for example, a station called in with a call sign and followed with emergency traffic, the net controller would know upfront that that particular station has got a transmission of an extremely high priority that needs to be dealt with, at which point everything else comes to a standstill. As soon as the station calls in with traffic, that means that he's in actual fact got traffic, but not of a high priority. So I prefer on a Sunday afternoon if each station calls in utilizing their call sign and then one of those three pro words to identify or to give notice to the net controller of where they stand. Now, I know this afternoon I wanted to do a meet and greet again because we have got new stations that are calling in. I'd also like John, Whiskey November 2 Whiskey, to start getting comfortable with the voices and to basically tune his ears into the voices, just in case he does miss any of the call signs. This week he's on Zoom. Usually he comes up on Echolink. So again, just a little bit of acoustical tuning for the ear benefit, if I can put it to you that way. I think, Joe, if you got any further questions on the traffic, no traffic, or emergency traffic, let's pick it up at the end of the net, please. Glenn, what I would like to do with you is, approximately 2 weeks ago, you called up to report an incident. And what I want from you tonight, or this afternoon, is to actually describe from your perspective, not my perspective or an assumption or otherwise, but from your perspective, the difficulties that you, as the reporter, experienced with that particular incident. So I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Glenn, and then, of course, you can give it back to me at the end. ZS6 Golf Golf Alpha, ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra.
ZS6 Golf Golf Alpha returning. Good evening, everybody. The incident Chad is describing was related to a bucky or a truck that had lost a load of recycled bottles. Just as we were passing Soweto heading northbound on the Mike 1. And I immediately called up and I called Chad and I said to Chad, you know, there's an incident that's occurred, and we started reporting. What I didn't initially give was my direction, which took another call to establish. And Chad obviously guided me in that way to say, are you heading north, are you heading south? You know, he's advised where the actual incident occurred, and it was heading northward or northbound on the Mike 1, and then just to the entry of the Maritzburg off ramp, to which then Chad and other stations called up and was able to guide and assist with the incident. Chad, I hope I've answered your question there. And let me give it back to you. ZS6 Oscar Papa here, ZS6 Golf Golf.
All right, thanks, Glenn. Glenn, specifically, what would you consider to be the most frustrating part of reporting that incident? And yeah, if you want to call me names, not a problem. I'm old enough and big enough to take it, but I'd really like you to drill down on what you consider to be extremely frustrating now that you've described what transpired. As ZS6GGA, ZS6 OPS.
ZS6 OPS from ZS6 Golf Golf Alpha. Chad, I wouldn't say too much frustration, more trying to establish exactly the direction and establishing the exact locations, because a brief description was not concise enough as to where it was actually occurring, and you kind of mentioned that information is what you needed. So I wouldn't say it was a frustrating part, but it was the part that made you realize that it's important to give the concise location if you're not giving a GPS location in order to establish exactly where the incident occurred. Back to Chad, ZS6 Oscar Papa, here from ZS6 of Alpha.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Glenn. Okay, so in essence, Glenn didn't feel the frustration. Now I think it's time for me to come in and explain this now from a different perspective and to point out a couple of the problems that a net controller or your controlling station may experience when taking an incident a situation, recording it, and then still wanting to pass it on to the authorities. So let's look at the sequence of events. You as a radio operator, whether you are based, mobile, or in a field station, is actually irrelevant, guys, because anything can happen in all three of those locations. And some of you might sit there now and think, well, you know, as a fuel station, what can happen? Well, a tractor can roll over out in the distance. You can see somebody falling off the side of a cliff out in the distance. Mobile station, of course, you're driving, you see something, you need to report on it, etc. Base station. Guys, you could be standing in your backyard and you look up and there's a hang glider suddenly in a spiral, or you could see a parajumper, somebody who's parachuting, whose chute doesn't open up. And you are the one that is going to call in and pass this information on. The same thing could apply with a downed aircraft. You could see an incident where an aircraft is suddenly, literally falling out of the sky. So now, for the purposes of this net, I just want to make it clear to all the listeners. This is not a real-time event. This is purely training and exercise, nothing more. So any reference to any type of incident is not real-time. I need to be clear with that one. Okay, so all three of these situations need precise information. The main reason is that you get your message across clearly and accurately. As a net controller, in the case of Glenn, let's role play the case that Glenn had. He's traveling down a road. I don't know as a net controller which road. He comes across an incident. He calls in, he says, I've got this type of incident that needs to be reported. It's on the November 1 and starts to give an indication. Besides sitting here and writing this information down, on our incident log sheets, I'm also dialing the emergency services contact telephone number. Because, and for me personally, if I'm listening to the incident location being given, I can speak it to the control center at the same time. Not only that, the control center can hear that the message is being relayed via radio, and that automatically increases that controller's confidence level. You see, there's a lot of calls that come in which are not legit. And EMS are always in a difficult situation of identifying true versus false calls or false alarms. And through this method, and it works, and it can work 90% of the time. I just want to clear my timeout timer. Right, ZS6 IPS returning. So in so doing, it becomes vitally important for you as an MCOM operator to be able to identify your location as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible. So Glenn is traveling down the road. Now, for all intents and purposes, I'll probably use different locations. I think for most of us that know the November 1, we've got Gordon Road, we've got 14th Avenue and Bayers Nordia. Let's just use those three intersections as an example. So you as an MCOM radio operator needs to identify that location as quickly as possible. And also, in order for you, okay, John, just stand by. Let me see, John, I've got you. Do you want to say something? No, okay. Let me just unmute John a minute. There we go, John.
I'm sorry to disrupt. Carry on.
Okay, thanks, John. All right, so you need to identify your location as quickly as possible. You're traveling down the road, you might, you know, we all concentrating on all kinds of things. Suddenly we miss out which was the last intersection we went past. ZS6 IPS returning. Guys, don't sweat it. Be calm, be patient, gather your thoughts, gather your position. So watch out for the next off-ramp board or next board that will indicate where you are. However, there's another thing that can assist you between each off-ramp. It's called the mile marker. The mile marker is approximately every 1.5 kilometers or every 1 kilometer. I think Stephen would actually remind me because we played the mile marker exercise several months back. But I think it's every kilometer apart. Now, the mile marker is a blue signboard posted on the left-hand side of your highway with white reflective lettering. And the signboard actually indicates 4 vitally important notifications on the board. And on the top line, the very first notification is the road or the route that you are traveling on. ZS6 IPS returning. For example, it would say November 1, November 3, November 12, whichever national road you are on, there will be a number followed by a hyphen. So the lettering before the hyphen indicates the roadway or highway that you are traveling on. The second section follows the hyphen. And this indicates the section of the route that you are traveling on. So what they have done is they've broken, you know, the November 3 travels from literally, shall we call it the northeast of Joburg all the way through to Cape Town. Not Cape Town, Durban, and possibly even further. So you can't just stipulate the November 3 from one given point to another given point, because the next set of numbers and indication on that board would become astronomically high. So beneath the road route and the section, we've got another third indication which stipulates the kilometer position on that particular route section. That will always start at 0 and then increment until they define another section. So again, let's look at from virtually the northern part of Sandton all the way down to Durban. There could very well be 20 sections. And 20 sections will start numbering and end numbering at some point. And that is based on the kilometers between your boards. Always look out for them. Whenever you pick up an incident, if you are mobile and it is possible, pull over at the next board. An MCOM radio operator should have pen, pencil, and a sharpener if you're using a pencil, and paper available at all times. Pull over. Stop for a minute alongside of the board, write the information down, get back into your lane, and continue giving your report on air. Then the fourth section of the board actually gives a notification of the direction within which you are traveling. For example, N for north, S for south, east or west. Now these mile markers are vitally important. You know, sometimes off-ramps are 10 kilometers apart, especially when you start hitting the open roads. And if you were to wait 10 kilometers and traffic is slow, it could take 20 minutes to actually get your report through to a base station or to a net controller. The purpose of MCOM, ultimately, at the end of the day, is to save life. That is the prime function of communicating clear, concise, accurate, direct, short messages. It is there to save life. Those that have done the first aid levels of training will understand and will know, as they have been taught, in order for a person to become brain dead, the body needs to be without oxygen for as little as 3 minutes. There's no time to play in MCOM. There's no time for long messages, long overs, getting lost on the roads, etc., etc. Guys, I think you can think for yourselves as to why it is important for us to identify our location as quickly as possible and to give it through as quickly as possible. Let me clear the timeout timer. ZS6 OPS returning. The next thing that I want to bring up is now, let's say, for example, you've forgotten clean about these mile markers. You're doing 120 kilometers down the highway. I know some of the national highways, the mile markers are also posted on the right-hand side. Not always, guys. Please bear that in mind, because that is a hazard. That there is a major hazard. You take one of those poles out and 3 cars behind you, you could be causing problems if that pole decides to flip. Hence the reason for keeping the extreme left-hand side of the highways open. It's supposed to keep vehicles away from poles and signboard markers and all the rest of it. So now, you can't see the signboard marker. Don't sweat it. Watch out for the next intersection. Make a mental note of it if you're still mobile, and give you a report stating approximately so many kilometers behind this intersection, northbound, southbound, eastbound, or westbound, so that your net controller, especially a net controller who is operational within your area of travel. And Glenn is asking for another opportunity. Yes, so I'm going to pull Glenn in a second. If your net controller is local to the area that you are traveling in, the chances are pretty good that he will know the road, the route, he will have traveled it, he will be familiar with it, and this goes for off-highway, suburban areas, suburb streets, even out in the plot areas. The guys tend to know the locations. Those that travel the road on a regular basis will be able to identify landmarks. For example, I'm just above MTN, for argument's sake. It'll give your net controller that opportunity to identify where he is, and more importantly, be able to pass that on to the authorities, whether that be fire, ambulance, SAP, Metro Police, or any other agency that would deal with that incident. All right, so having said all of this, I'm bringing it up because Glenn and I had this incident, we were able to identify it. There's a couple of other things that I do want to add after Glenn's elaboration. So I'll pick up on that as soon as Glenn is finished. ZS6GGA, ZS6OPS, giving my hand a break on the PTT.
ZS6OPS from ZS6GGA.
Shopping
thank you very
mentioned
much for calling
Snowden.
me back in. I do appreciate it. I revisited the incident in my mind a bit more, and you talked about frustrating and things that just allowed me to get into contact with you because I didn't have a radio. I was in via Ecolink. I didn't have a pen. I didn't have a paper. I was essentially more unprepared than I like to be. I was actually in another vehicle, so I wasn't prepared. And we as MCOM operators should always be prepared. But with what I had, I did my best. The other thing that was concerning for me was I knew and revised on the roads around the city. And that's just the thing. Revision is one thing. You guys will know that when you work on things, you always have to revise your notes. You'll go back. You'll work with maths or you'll do whatever you do in your career. And then you'll have to revert to revision to realize what you need to understand. And in MCOM, we don't have the time for that. So we always need to be revised and always need to be practiced. So that's my point in the chat. I hope I've done a little bit more there. Thanks for the opportunity again, and I appreciate it. ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra. Golf Alpha.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, no, you see, now Glenn's actually brought up one or two of the points that I wanted to cover about revisiting what you've done. Several weeks ago, when during one of the training sessions that I did, I used the word a post-mortem. At the end of every single incident that we deal with, we shouldn't just bottle it up. We should speak it out and learn from our mistakes. You see, we're back down to designing things for failure. And when you design something for failure, it gives you an opportunity to go back, relook it, and find a workable solution to whatever you identify as something that is not of a standard that produces a required result. So well done there, Glenn. Fantastic. Now, what I wanted to bring in as an extra here, looking at those three intersections or off-ramps, Gordon Road, 14th Avenue, and Beyers Nordia. You've lost your sense of direction for whatever reason. You're unable to write it down, as Glenn has said. You get to the next intersection, you identify it, you give it back to your net controller. Now, guys, on that particular section of road, we've had total road closure. Absolute total road closure. 3 lanes are closed. The left-hand lane, please bear in mind, we do not have emergency lanes. So on the verge of the highway, also closed. The grass zone to the right, closed, because there's vehicles, trucks, debris, cargo scattered across the road. So fine, you've given us the right location. Between Gordon and 14th Avenue, we got a multiple car pileup or MVA, motor vehicle accident. Injuries are unknown. We need fire because there's definitely entrapments. I saw 2 vehicles had rolled. I saw a truck had jackknifed across the road. And this is just about 2 kilometers before we get to 14th Avenue. No problem. Short, sweet, direct. You've given us pretty good information. And of course, that's on the November 1. Northbound. Excellent. So your net controller phones EMS, hands it over. They tell you, yes, the authorities will respond. And of course, they dispatch all the vehicles from the southbound side of the highway, bring them in from Nasrec, Maritzburg, and guess what? You've got fire trucks sitting at the back of total congestion. You've got ambulances sitting behind the accident. They cannot get in. There's nowhere for the vehicles to move. 3 minutes, people, 3 minutes. Now, I know it takes a lot longer to get vehicles in, but you've got to work on that 3-minute rule. So if you find that that is the situation, give as much as you can. Look in your rear view mirror. Give an indication that this could result in total road closure so that your net controller can notify the control rooms. Gentlemen, access this incident from the north, not from the south, because they will get stuck at the back. And I want to tell you, at 2300 hours on a Friday night, to be stuck between Gordon Road and, correction, between 14th and Beyersnoddeer, you've got 5 ambulances, 3 JMPD, and 2 fire engines, 1 being rescue, at a complete standstill, 2 kilometers before the actual incident. The net result of it is JMPD has to then be radioed. They have to radio into the vehicles on the northbound side, close off the southbound section of the highway, and if it is at all possible, those emergency vehicles would have to cross the center island, use the southbound lane against oncoming traffic, which already is a danger and a risk, not only to other road users, but more specifically to the rescuers. Sorry, guys, your rescuers come first, after you. Your safety is number 1 priority. Your rescuers, whether that is police, traffic, ambulance, fire, search and rescue, those guys take first priority before other road users and before patients, because a dead hero is no good to anybody. So you need to give as much info as you possibly can, and preferably the control room should be made aware of the fact of the potential of a total road closure. You know, sometimes a motor vehicle accident only covers 2 lanes, but idiot drivers close the verges and the other lane, and they cause a complete gridlock and nobody can get in. And then on top of that, once the EMS does arrive, you still got to contend with getting the patient out. And when you get a total deadlock or gridlock like that, you've got another danger. Especially those of you that know the November 14 section of the highway between Gordon and 14th. Suddenly there, just before 14th, there's a downhill. And there's a bend. And now you've got an 18-wheeler truck cruising at 140 kilometers per hour with a full load, and he comes around the bend, and suddenly it is a sea of red lights. And for those that have put hazards on, oh man, it looks like a Christmas party. And he cannot stop. And he plows into the back of a congested highway. And this is where you get your multiple car pileups. So Glenn, I want to thank you for bringing this incident up, because it reminded me of 2 incidents that I've just described on that very same section of highway. The one was at 8 a.m. in the morning, and I must admit I only managed to get out of that operation at 11 hours 30. Midsummer, that even the soles of my shoes were melting on the highway. That's how hot it gets for the rescuers and for the people that are sitting there. And the second incident being at 11 p.m. at night. And that incident, we did have a runaway truck. And we did have a motor vehicle accident as a result of it. Fortunately, it wasn't a serious one, because we did have a speeding, alert driver who used the verge of the highway, yet still managed to stop 1 meter from the rear end of a fire tender. It could have been catastrophic. Now, what I would like to do, I'd like to just take a 10-second pause and swap hands on the PTT. I'm going to unmute John's microphone here. For those of you that don't know, Whiskey November 2 Whiskey, John, South Carolina, USA. You're going to give us a little bit of his background. And perhaps if, John, you want to add something from stateside perspective, please go ahead. Stand by one. Right, Whiskey November 2 Whiskies, ZS6 OPS. Go ahead, John.
Okay, Chad, very good. Just for the group, I've been an amateur now 48 years. Still very fascinated with the hobby and the aspect for what it brings to community and support and keeping up the goodwill and the art of amateur radio. Still very enthused with it. Chad, all the points you talked about there, very, very important. In my 17 years of law enforcement here in the States, I echo that and I champion everything you say, even in a known culture where you speak the same language and everybody's pretty much on the same sheet of music, for lack of a better term. Communication can be very confusing. Exact details in the relay from the person either on the phone or on the radio to the control operator to the dispatch at emergency services can break down very quickly with as many, the more links in the communication, the clarity and concise details can get broken down, distorted in the translation. And again, even in a common language and society, the mile marker or the address of an incident could come out several kilometers away, wrong details, wrong house number, particularly on the highway. And I have found that to be true. So you touched on a lot of important points that I would echo and say exactly the same thing. So short transmissions, clarity, precision, particularly heightened emotion. We have to hang on to emotions, hang on to what you actually saw rather than what you thought you might have seen or what you might know to be true, but accurate decisions, accurate descriptions, all that comes into play and is paramount there. Good evening to everybody here on the net. Good to be part of it. Back to you, Chad.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you there, John. Whiskey November 2 Whiskey, ZS6 OPS back on the mic. Guys, I see we're coming up for 1825. I'm not going to do a round of closing. Instead, I just want to inform you we are 19 on net this afternoon, so well done. Fantastic. For those of you that are new, please encourage other amateurs to come and join us. You don't need to be a member of anything, anybody or otherwise. The only thing that's required to join the net is the payment of your ECRN license for the amateur bands, and you are more than welcome to join us. For those also, the newer guys in particular, spread the word. You can either join us on Zoom. I'll give the landline number out just now, or the cell phone number. The guys can always hook up on WhatsApp. I'll give the Zoom link. So we're opening up different types of communication channels. Like, for example, now John being on Zoom this afternoon, even though he didn't use his call sign, I was holding the microphone. So being a licensed amateur, he is quite capable of being able to transmit on air. That goes for anybody else. And if they want to join by Echolink, also fantastic. Like I was hoping Mr. Sid, as what is he now? ZS5 Sid, I think it is, Joe, would have called up. So even if they are outside the ZS6 zone, not a problem. They are more than welcome to call up. I want to thank John for his input there as well. Christian, when he left a few minutes ago, also suggested I bring up the point of when dealing with shopping centers, one of the biggest problems, and I'm glad that Christian reminded me of it. My days at the Free Ambulance and Red Cross Ambulance, you get called out to a shopping center. Yeah, right. The circumference around that is 2 kilometers long to start off with. So which entrance do you go to? You need to know the entrance to the shopping center, because I can assure you it's like being a married man that's told to go and buy a packet of chips and he ends up at cash converters and not at Pick and Pay. When he gets home, the wife is very upset. Well, guess what, guys? We need the shopping centers entrance numbers to know which side of the shopping center the incident is, and also to know, in some cases, which of the side roads or off-ramps we need to utilize in order to access that particular shopping center. Right, on that note, I want to thank everybody that has called in. Let's just do a quick round and see if there's anybody else that would like to add themselves to the net. ZS6IP is standing by. Give me your call sign, please. Okay, good stuff. No further call-ins. Again, thank you everybody for calling up this afternoon. Those of you that would like to call up in with Zoom and maybe take a round or two and have a chat with John, I'll unmute everybody's microphones. You guys can have a general chat there with him, say howdy, whatever the case. If not, yeah, then we'll all bail out. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys learned something from this afternoon. I hope you'll take this to heart, document it. The Zoom recording I'll make available, and that will be posted up on the CERT website as well. So, reminder, this net is run every Sunday afternoon from 17:30 hours, Central African time, specifically geared towards emergency communications or MCOM. Everybody is welcome. And, yep, there we go for the week ahead. Have a good one. And of course, be safe, be happy, and always be prepared. This is ZS6 Oscar Papa Sierra, now releasing 145.625 for general use. Good afternoon, everybody. Cheers. Okay, let's hope nobody calls me now like they normally do on 2 meters afterwards. So let's unmute. Caitlin, Margie, and Norman, your mic isn't up, so I don't know what you're going to do there. Maybe just send me a message if you got something you want to add. Caitlin, let me introduce you to John. Margie Rutter. John, just as a matter of interest, Margie Rutter was my operations officer. Margie was also a regional councillor with the South African Red Cross Southern Transvaal region. When I was operations manager with them, we go back 40-odd years. Margie, yeah, there you go, Margie. Margie is still in this sort of double mind about joining the CERT program, but does participate and definitely calls up and gets involved on the WhatsApp side. All right, so let's kick off. Caitlin, you take it away.
Hey, John. Hey, Margaret. And Norman, if you are listening.
Hi, Caitlin.
John, I wanted to ask you, good thanks in yourself. Okay, so my question, and Chad, I want you to also give your advice on this, is you said that one incident is across all 4 lanes, let's say, and then it's backed up. Could the emergency, so it's going northbound, could the emergency not get on that, the next off-ramp and go southbound on that northbound road to the emergency where there's no traffic, no danger, and get right to the accident?
Okay, John is giving a thumbs up, and I'm going to give the thumbs up and say, yes, Caitlin, it is possible. Normally when it becomes a known fact that the opposite end, the back end of the accident is actually gridlocked completely and it's a total shutdown, the authorities will in actual fact approach on the wrong side of the highway coming down. They still come down very cautiously, because many a time you've always got that idiot that's late, the wife is going to kill him, the boss is going to kill him, or he's just generally impatient. He shoots through the cordon up at the front, he floors it, and before he knows it, there's an ambulance head-on collision directly in front of him. So yes, they do it, but it's not normal practice, because safety comes first. If you haven't got JMPD at the top end of the accident, they will not just do it until JMPD gives full clearance that that highway is literally closed. And normally what we do as auxiliary vehicles, you actually form a blockade across the complete section of road, especially if they are bringing the chopper in for a helo rescue, because there you cannot have any margin for error at all. Caitlin, over to you, or John, you want to add something?
Well, I was just curious, as far as income operators go, what kind of authority do you have in the public sector? What kind of liaison do you have with all aspects of emergency services, from law enforcement, fire brigade, fire rescue, ambulance, EMS service? I'm just curious on how you fit in with all aspects of emergency services.
You know what, John? I think I'm going to make a motor on the fitting. Can we turn that into a discussion maybe next Sunday's net for the benefit of all? It's an exceptionally good question. And the reason I'd like to roll it out onto the amateur side is because I think once the amateurs are aware of where we actually don't exist, why it becomes important for us to have that disciplined, professional approach. So if you wouldn't mind, can we slot that? I'm gonna put it on my list here for next week's conversation point. You good with that?
Sure.
Good stuff. Margie.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What? I got nothing to say. I'm just listening. Because as you know, my house is up on the hill and overlooks all of those three intersections, Gordon Road, 14th Avenue and Bayers. And I've seen some pretty heavy stuff come all the time. And I know that there was the one incident which you've forgotten about. It was on the November 1 south between 14th Avenue and Gordon Road, and there was a car on fire. And there were people in the car. And the emergency services could not get through the traffic to that car. And you were screaming at me on the radio to get some assistance, and they couldn't get through.
I did. Good.
Do you remember that incident?
Yeah, I remember that one. Good stuff.
Close. If you remember,
visitors.
You closed the road, if you remember, and you got into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? I mean, it's been quite often that they've wanted to arrest me on the road, haven't they, Margie?
Yeah. You closed the road and you were in a lot of trouble. But I just remember the emotions I was going through watching this fire, know what was going on in that car, and nobody could get through to them. It was the most dreadful thing I've ever experienced.
I think for John's benefit, John, I need to add that besides being on ambulance and rescue and operations level on the Red Cross side, I did a 2-year stint with private ambulance service, number one. And number two, I continued my voluntary work in my own private capacity utilizing my own vehicle, which was marked, lights, siren, and all the rest of it. So I pushed the limiter. Again, where do we fit in? I think a very good talking point for next week. Okay, guys, I see Rory's also looking for me. Anybody got any questions, anything along those lines? Otherwise, let's bail out. And I can also give my vocal cords a bit of a break.
Cheers, Chad.
Okay, Margie.
Thanks, Margie, Caitlin, Chad. All the best. Hope you folks have a great week. Stay safe out there. Keep up the good work. Stay faithful to the cause. And I hope to catch up with you soon. I go back out on the road for 8 days tomorrow. So I will probably miss the net next week, Sunday, unless I'm on standby in a hotel somewhere waiting to go. But it would probably be then in a fortnight before I'm able to be back with the net. But I wish you, everyone, all the best. Have a great week. And thanks for letting me come in.
Thanks,
All right,
John. Bye-bye.
John, not a problem. If we do it in a fortnight, that's also fine. We'll play it by ear, you know, at your convenience and all the rest of it. At least with these types of questions, and I normally take questions and then turn them into some form of informative session or even a training session. And then, of course, somewhere along the line, I will do an on-air or desk exercise for the guys. And this is where this whole encouragement, and I think the more topics that we got, the more input we start getting. And I really appreciate your willingness to participate in this. And it gives us that other perspective as well, which I think is important. So not a problem. I'm going to wish you all the best then for your 8-day trip. And if you are on standby and you come up either Echo Link or Zoom, that would be great as well.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much. I don't know what else I can add to this, Chad. There's a lot to talk about. I know everybody's time is limited, and I hope throughout the remainder of your weekend you have a good Sunday evening, and I won't add to that. We could probably talk more when it's a little more convenient.
Fantastic, John. Not a problem at all. Feel free.
All right, cheers. All the best.
Anytime. I'm normally at my desk here for several hours a day.
Good. Thank you so much. Cheers. All the best.
Thanks, John. Caitlin, cheers.
Cheers.